sports?
Yeah, we got some of that.
This is 94.3 The Game, WRHD-FM, Farmville, Washington, Greenville. Thanks for hanging out.
Do you live ECU? Do you breathe purple and gold?
Are you ready to hoist the colors? Now, time for the most in-depth look at the world of ECU athletics. Welcome in to Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igoe on 94.3 The Game. Watch the show live on Facebook and at 943thegame.com. Now, here's your host, Stephen Igoe.
All right, welcome into this Tuesday, June 6th edition of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game. As we move further away from the conclusion of the 2023 ECU baseball season, we'll be talking more and more Pirate football as we turn the page to the upcoming fall. We'll do that today. We'll continue on with our opponent previews. We're going to talk about the Marshall Thundering Herd, which, of course, will be the second game on the 2023 schedule. We previewed Michigan a few weeks ago. We'll talk to Luke Creasy from the Herald-Dispatch in Huntington, West Virginia, to get an in-depth look at the Marshall Thundering Herd here shortly. We're also going to have a special segment. Philip Pilkington joins us in studio where we preview and really rank the 12 opponents on ECU's schedule, which we're going to do here shortly. Philip, have you completed your homework assignment? It was short notice, by the way, so no pressure or anything.
I did complete it. I'm going to say I didn't have as much time to look at transfers and things like that as I would probably want to, but I did complete it. I've got my my 12 guys or 12 teams listed here.
Yeah, we're going to go through that and basically rank them from easiest to hardest, which we'll do here in a second. I do want a few programming notes. Okay, first off, so of course we started this show on May 1st, and for the most part, it's obviously it's a daily show, 12 to 1 daily. It's going to be pretty much year-round, but in the summer when ECU sports basically comes to a halt, which it has with the conclusion of the baseball season, we are going to take a break. So we've decided we're going to run the show through not only this week but next week, continue to bring you great interviews, content, and then at the conclusion of next Friday, that will be our last show for the summer. We will be back in early August for the football season, and we may have a few pop-up shows here or there for special events throughout late June and July. We're still kind of working on that. But, we've been able to do really kind of almost a trial run of shorts to see what is good as far as the show, what works, what doesn't, what we want to change, tweak. But we've gotten a ton of great feedback, a ton of great interaction. Of course, we'll still have coverage for you daily on hoistthecolors.net. I know Patrick Johnson with his show will continue on. I think his plan maybe go through the end of June, maybe into July a little bit. They're still discussing that as well. So we'll continue to have coverage for you, but just wanted to update you on that. And Philip, it's been a fun month plus of kind of figuring things out. I've never hosted a daily show before. I've had the podcast and I've had another radio program in the past, but I feel like we've done a solid job. I'm sure there are areas we can clean up, but I feel like this thing's gotten off to a good start, and you've done a great job as our co-host.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun. I think we've definitely developed some pretty good chemistry for two guys who've only worked together for, 5 weeks now, and yeah. I'm looking forward to a little time off over the summer, maybe go get a little bit of a tan at the beach, but I'm definitely looking forward to doing it next year and, finishing out these final 2 weeks here strong because we got a lot to talk about, especially with football. Football's my favorite sport, so I'm really looking forward to this.
When we get to August, man, it's going to be popping. This show, we already got a ton of great interaction with Twitter and YouTube, Facebook. By the way, if you're listening today, you got a comment or question, drop it. Whether it's football, baseball, anything, we'll answer it. But I think as we get closer to football season, it's going to take off that much more. And, thanks to Interbanks Media for supporting the show. Clark Willis doing a great job behind the scenes, producing it. The graphics all look awesome. Chris Cook been responsible for a lot of our graphics on social media as well to promote the show. So everybody plays a hand, and it's been a ton of fun to watch thus far. Other programming notes, so tomorrow we will have former ECU offensive lineman Garrett McGinn, who just won an XFL championship with the Dallas, I believe the Arlington Renegades is their name for the XFL. Yeah. They just won a championship. Josh Hawkins was on his team as well, former Pirate. So we'll talk to Garrett, who was one of my favorite interviews from his time at ECU tomorrow. We're also going to talk to former ECU receiver Keith Stokes on Friday. He was part of the teams in the the late 90s, of course, with David Garrard, Steve Logan. We had them on earlier this month or early in May, and we'll have Keith Stokes on to catch up with him Friday, former great ECU return man. Also had a long stint in the CFL as well, so we'll catch up with Keith Stokes. And then next week, we're going to have Shane Winkler, the head softball coach, in Studio 2. We're looking at Tuesday right now, and then, of course, we're going to have more and more previews, reaching out to a ton of writers for ECU football opponents, already trying to get the App State publisher from App State Mania on the 24/7 Sports Network on the show as well. He may slot in Thursday, but we'll try and figure that out as we go forward. All right, Philip, you ready to do some opponent rankings?
I am. This is going to be fun. I'm excited. I'm kind of getting chill bumps because it feels like football season's right around the corner now.
There's nothing like a good off-season list, and I think that's what we're gonna have, as many off-season lists as possible over this next week and a half as we wrap up programming for the month of June. I tell you, let's go from easiest to hardest, and we'll each give our answer one by one, and we'll kind of compare notes. I'm gonna assume we have the easiest game being the same. I'll let you go first, and then I'll give my take.
I got Michigan. Oh, no, wait, my bad. Wrong end of the list. I'm going to go on a limb and say we both have Gardner-Webb for this one.
Yep, Gardner-Webb, the running Bulldogs, I have as the easiest game. And I'm like you, Philip. I didn't do a ton of research for this. And look, that's the best part about off-season lists. Who really does a ton of research for something in June for a September football game? Not that we didn't do our job, but I'm just saying, like, there's so much that can change between now and then. I will say this, Gardner-Webb, much better than the Gardner-Webb ECU saw in 2019. That was not a good football team. They won 48-10. This team was in the FCS playoffs last year. They played 3 FBS games, Philip. They lost to Liberty by, I think, 1 point on the road. They also competed, I think it was App, and one more. So this team, I have it as the easiest game, but I am not taking it for granted, and it kind of falls in a tricky part on the schedule too. I would like this game to be the opener. Instead, it falls as the final non-conference game.
Yeah, that is a little weird to get your FCS opponent that late. But with, you mentioned how much better they've gotten. Maybe it's a good thing that they're not the first game, because you would hate to do what you did in 2017 and in 2018 and fall to an FCS team. Not that I think that would happen if we played them the first game, but, East Carolina is really going to have to figure out their identity this year, and that's going to take a couple weeks. So with that coming as game 4, it's maybe a little better than it coming as game 1.
So, yeah, just put up the schedule. Gardner-Webb last year 7-6, but 7-3 versus FCS teams. So here were their 3 FBS games, Philip. At Coastal Carolina, they lost 31-27. Pretty respectable score.
Yeah, and a team that made a bowl game.
At Marshall, yeah, good team. And that was when I'm pretty sure the quarterback was healthy, Grayson McCall. So, yeah. At Marshall on October 1st, 28-7. Again, not a bad score at all. And then Liberty on October 15th, 21-20, they lost. I believe they gave up a late score. Yeah, Liberty scored in the fourth quarter, go-ahead touchdown. So, again, I don't know what Gardner-Webb does and doesn't have coming back. Like, I know it. I can tell you about every scholarship player on the ECU football roster at this point. I haven't dove into these opponents a lot, but I do know that Gardner-Webb is a little scary as a FCS team if they're, returning a lot. So, again, 3 FBS games a year ago. They play App State on the road to open this year. So that'll be a good barometer, kind of for 2 ECU opponents. All right, let's continue on with our list. Philip, I have – and I kind of had three teams grouped here. And I don't know about you, but I factored in, like, road and home, like those being a factor because, we're ranking the opponents, but really you're almost ranking the games because, to me, a game on the road is a little tougher, versus a game at home. I have Tulsa and the Golden Hurricane as my second easiest game. I debated this one with 2 other teams, which we can get into. But who did you have next on the list?
It's interesting. I kind of do have a group of three here. I'm sure we'll probably have the same three teams. But I had Charlotte at number 2, and the reason I chose to put them over Tulsa is Biff Poggi has never been a head coach, unlike the new coach at Tulsa, Kevin Wilson. And Charlotte only won 3 games a year ago. I saw them play once in person, and they were abysmal. And that game's at home. So, yeah, I don't know. I went Charlotte.
Charlotte's a fair answer. They were another team I debated. I just have a feeling from what I've heard with Biff Poggi and kind of just everything he's doing there, they may be a disaster. They may be, but they have taken a ton of transfers and almost kind of rebuilt the team this offseason. So, the only reason I have them a little higher than Tulsa right now is for that reason, because of the unknown. But, again, there's a chance they're just not good. But I think either one of those is fair. Either one of those is a home game. So that's why I have Tulsa second, and that's why you have Charlotte second easiest. All right, let's continue with our list. I'll let you go with your third easiest game on the schedule.
I mean, for the same reason you had them at number 2, I have Tulsa sitting at number 3.
The Tulsa Golden Hurricane, number 3 on Phillips' list. I have a bit of a surprise here, maybe. It's the easiest road game, in my opinion, at Rice. I have the Rice Owls. These were the 3 teams I kind of grouped together, Tulsa, Rice, and Charlotte. I don't know if you had any differences, Philip, but I have Rice. I think it's Mike Bloomgren has been the head coach there a while. They've gotten slightly better in recent years, but I think this is a very winnable road game to open conference play. I know it'll be an empty stadium. Nobody cares about Rice football in the state of Texas, but I have the Rice Owls as the third easiest game on the schedule. So you have Tulsa, right?
Yeah, I have Tulsa at 3.
Similarities there. All right. Next up on my list is Charlotte, for the reasons we just mentioned. A lot of newcomers there, a lot of transfers. We'll see how they are. And who do you have, Rice, or do you have somebody else?
No, I have Rice at 4. I mean, yeah, I think our heads are kind of going in the same direction here. It was kind of tough to rank these 3. But I did have all the, I kind of shuffled them around a few times, but yeah, those are my 2, 3, and 4. Got Rice. They only won 5 games a year ago. Yes, by some weird scenario, they made a bowl game despite only winning 5 games and being of a group of 5 conference. They went 5-8, but yeah, I don't see much from Rice that really scares me.
This is a big year, you would think, for their coach. If he doesn't have a winning record to get them to a bowl game. They went to a bowl game, but it was because they had the highest APR score or whatever. So
yeah, or something.
Yes, and they ended up losing that. So interesting situation there. All right, let's get through a couple more teams on our list. We'll make it to the halfway point, and then we'll break and get our guest on. All right, so next up, this is where it gets a little tough, Philip. I think you get through these first 4 teams, Gardner-Webb, Tulsa, Rice, Charlotte, and then to me it gets a lot tougher. I think those are the easiest games by far on your schedule. So at number 5, from easiest to hardest, I have at FAU, and I don't feel great about it. I feel like FAU could be a lot better than we expect. But again, first-year coach Tom Herman, he's had success in the American. Maybe he surprises us. I know they've taken some transfers. It's a good recruiting ground. But I have the FAU Owls on the road as the 5th easiest game. How about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. These next really 3 or even kind of 4 teams, I was a little skeptical on where to put them, but I put Navy. I know the Pirates have struggled against Navy in the past. I mean, in my time here, now 6 years, I've seen them go, I believe, 1-3 against the midshipmen. But with Ken Niumatalolo leaving, I mean, he had been there longer than I had been alive, and that is not a figure of speech. He really had been there longer than I had been alive. And to see him leave, just kind of uncertain what the midshipmen have, as well as the fact that the portal really hurts these service academies because people can recruit their kids. Unfortunately, they cannot go out and recruit anyone else's kids.
Yeah, I toyed with Navy, FAU kind of in this group as well. I have Navy a little higher up on my list just for the reasons you mentioned, just because if you could take all things being equal, if you could just look at Navy versus FAU, I would have Navy as the worst team, but with ECU's history, I almost feel like it's become a boogeyman situation. Can you beat Navy? Maybe Ken Niumatalolo leaving changes things, but I had them a little higher. Number 6, I've got Marshall. I've got the Marshall Thundering Herd. They closed last year with a 5-game winning streak. I really like Charles Huff. Again, this is where your schedule gets a lot tougher. Marshall by no means will be an easy game. We'll talk to Luke Creasy about why here in a bit. But I have Marshall number 6. Who do you have as your 6th spot as we wrap up our first half of this discussion?
Yeah, this is a team who probably deserves to be farther down the list, but I think that the Pirates really do have a pretty tough schedule this year. I've got SMU there. Yeah, it was so tough between Navy, SMU, Marshall, FAU for me. I just figured, home game, we'll have figured out our identity by that point, hopefully, as that comes in mid-October. Thursday night game, Dowdy's always rocking for night games, so that's why I got SMU at 6.
That's a fair take. SMU, I think if that game's in Dallas, it's much higher on both our lists. We'll get into where I have the Mustangs and also where I have Navy on the other side. We'll continue with that discussion later in the show. Let's talk about the Marshall Thundering Herd on the other side. We'll be visited with Luke Creasy of the Herald-Dispatch, who covers Marshall firsthand as we preview that game. You're listening to Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
Sunday night Pirate baseball season came to an end at the hands of Virginia Cavaliers.
This is the Pirate Report on 94.3 The Game. Sponsored by the IBX Pirate Partners, Moore's Old Time Barbecue Chicken and Seafood, Fantastic Sam's Cut and Color, and Carib Sea and Emerald Isle.
After the game, Coach Godwin talked about his seniors, Lane Hoover, Carter Spivey, and Garrett Saylor.
I don't know Chip on most wins ever in ECU baseball history in 5 years, but as good as baseball players, they are the better people, and that's the thing I say every year. That we do it the right way. We don't cheat, we do it the right way, and we're going to get there. It's just hard to be not that door now, but I tell you what, we'll get out of it. It just ain't come down yet. And when it comes down, it's going to be a flood of purple gold to be known. I can tell you that. It's like Coach.
They certainly did mean a lot to this team and to this 47-win 2023 campaign. The Pirates will be back at it next season with hopes of finally making that first trip to Omaha. That'll do it for your 94.3 The Game Pirate Report. I'm Philip Pilkington.
Hear 94.3 The Game anytime on the IBX Media app.
Is it free?
Yes.
The only app you need.
I love the app.
Download it for free in the App Store or Google Play and get to your favorite radio station in 2 clicks. All your sports, music, talk, and podcasts,
Including the latest from Steve and Igoe
at Hoist the Colors.
and year-round coverage from the East Carolina Sports Network.
Listen live anytime, anywhere to ENC Radio's best.
I always listen.
Download the app.
The IBX Media app.
I'm with my health insurance agent, Bill Jenkins. Bill is an employee benefits specialist and life insurance agent from Town Insurance. Bill, give us an update on Town Insurance here in North Carolina.
Town Insurance is a top insurance and employee benefits agency in North Carolina and ranks in the top 50s nationwide. We have primary offices in Greenville, Kinston, Wilmington, Raleigh, and now Charlotte.
And Bill, what are areas Town Insurance specializes in?
With our experienced account management team, we specialize in employee benefits, including group medical, dental, life, vision, disability, and voluntary options for employees. We compare these options with several of the best carriers in the market and assist businesses on benefit administration as well as employee education and enrollments.
And how can a business best contact you to review their employee benefits program?
Give us a call, 252-756-8300.
Call today, as the best time is now to come to town.
Here there be pirates. Back to Hoist the Colors with Steve and Igoe. How good is this?
On 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome back into this Tuesday, June 6th edition of Hoist the Colors. Of course, the Pirate baseball season came to an unfortunate end on Sunday night. With that, we recapped the season on Monday. We've started to turn the page to the upcoming football season. It'll be here before you know it. We are starting our opponent preview breakdowns. We talked Michigan a few weeks ago. The Pirates will open at Michigan. Then they will return home to take on the Marshall Thundering Herd. And to preview Marshall, we have Luke Creasy from the Herald-Dispatch, who covers the Thundering Herd in Huntington, West Virginia. Luke, welcome into the program. And Charles Huff, obviously having 2 good years, the head coach at Marshall, already under his belt. Kind of from your perspective, what are the expectations going into year 3 for Coach Huff?
Well, I really think that, the expectations are pretty high after some of what they were able to accomplish last season. Obviously, coming into his first year, he took over a pretty good program that Doc Holliday had coached the year before, but a massive disappointment at the end of that 2020 year really set up the scene for a coaching change. And Huff has come in and really established, his identity and his culture within the program. I think you saw kind of what the base foundation of that is, with, an early statement win at Notre Dame last year and kind of the success that carried them through. And that, relies a lot on their defense. And as long as that defense is solid, the ceiling is pretty high for this team. They were probably a couple plays away from playing in a Sun Belt title game in their first year in the league, and really have added quite a few pieces back from the production that they lost from a year ago. That defense is looking pretty solid again. And, so I think they have the belief that they can go compete for a Sun Belt title. Obviously that league is not easy. There's several teams that could compete for that, but Marshall figures to be right in the mix, and they believe they've got the talent to do it. And I don't disagree with them on a lot of fronts. The offense coming back. They've got they kind of figured out some answers. Worked through most of last year without Rasheen Ali, which is their primary back and a big difference maker on the offensive side of the ball, and then kind of muddled through last year without him on the offensive side. But still we're in a lot of ball games, even the 4 that they lost. So I think this is a group that is very talented and very eager to get back out there.
We're visiting with Luke Creasy, who covers Marshall for the Herald-Dispatch. And, yeah, I was just looking over the scores from last year, Luke, and a ton of scores in the 20s, really on both sides. It's not like their offense, like you mentioned, was kind of lighting the world on fire. They were struggling a little bit. And, Charles Huff, kind of an offensive coach traditionally. I know he was a running backs coach, of course, at Alabama before getting the job. Has it been a surprise how good the defense has been through his first 2 years in Huntington?
I think for those that have followed the Marshall program, defense has kind of been a staple, and the offense has kind of followed behind that. I think after you look at winning the conference in 2014, where they were putting up something like 40 points a game, obviously those teams are like kind of in the middle of Doc Holliday's coaching tenure, were very offensive heavy, and you almost had to put up 35, 40 points a game to win some of those ball games. But that tide kind of turned, in the 20, I want to say probably 2018, 2019 range. The defense, kind of the identity of this program, and Chuck Heater, former defensive coordinator, who left Marshall from Maryland a couple seasons ago, had a lot to do with that. And then Lance Guidry coming up from the FCS level. He had been a head coach at McNeese State, takes a defensive coordinator position, which is kind of more was his more natural realm. Spent the last 2 years kind of creating that defensive identity. And even when he left for Tulane, and then ultimately went on to Miami, Lance Guidry, the former defensive coordinator, they hired a guy who kind of comes from the same background as Guidry and Jason Seymour. And so I don't expect that defensive identity to change much. And it's a fun brand of defense to watch. They tend to let guys have a little bit of freedom. Obviously they've got some base defenses and some defensive sets that they like to get into and run, for a runner pass situation. But for the most part, they're relying on their guys' athleticism to make plays, and I think that's a big part of why the production has been there, is because they're getting the most out of their guys, because guys enjoy playing in that system. So, it's been fun to watch, and it's probably been needed, because they, the last few years have been a struggle at quarterback for the Thundering Herd. When you look at Grant Wells, he spent 2 years as the starter, then transferred to Virginia Tech. Last year, they brought in Texas Tech transfer Henry Colombi, and he played for 6 games, appeared in 7, had started 6 of those, but ended up landing on Cam Fancher, who was kind of the dark horse the entire time, under both of those guys, Grant Wells and Henry Colombi. And, that offense has struggled at times, made some strides at the end of last year once they got Rasheen Ali back, but they have needed that defensive production to be as successful as they have.
We're visiting with Luke Creasy, who covers Marshall. Of course, ECU will take on Marshall on September 9th inside Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium. We'll talk about that rivalry here in a little bit, Luke. But when you look at the quarterback situation and everything they kind of went through last year, is it, is there a proven starter on paper now, or is it still an open competition? What is the plan going into the fall for the Thundering Herd at quarterback?
Yeah, obviously, Henry Colombi had expired eligibility last year. Was the 6th season of college football, so he's out of the picture. Cam Fancher, I think, I've done several of these interviews that are trying to preview the season, and every time I say that I think that Cam Fancher is the favorite to win the position coming into the year. There's obviously some youth still in the quarterback room behind him, namely guys like Cole Pennington, who has ran the scout team offense last year. There's Chase Harrison, who's in the mix as well. And then they brought in a transfer from Rice, TJ McMahon, a kid who has a lot of experience playing at the Division I level. And so I think that probably threw a wrench into things as far as fan expectation goes, when you bring in a guy that has the experience that TJ McMahon does, coming from Rice, and having played a couple years of really foundationally solid football there for the Owls. And when you bring him in, I think that created a little bit of question. Obviously the team got back to summer practice last week, and we've seen just a little bit of everybody. And I think Huff probably won't make a decision on that until late into fall camp, which is kind of the same way he approached it last year. Really wants to give those guys time to compete, but I think Fancher, assuming that he's healthy and and capable, probably has to be the front runner after what he was able to accomplish with the offense last year. They won the last 5 games, won 6 of the 7 that he started. There was some injury to Henry Colombi that kind of forced him into the starting spot. I think he made his first start down at James Madison, and really had success from there on out. The one game they lost was the week after that. It was a 24-21 loss to Coastal Carolina, in which they gave up 21 points in the first quarter. The Chanticleer's first 3 drives all ended in touchdowns, and then they only gave up a field goal after that. I think he's probably got the most head knowledge of the offense, and he's working with the same offensive coordinator in Clint Trickett that Marshall had last year. So I think he's got to be the front runner. But that's not to say there's not competition behind him that's going to give him a slight push. And I think that's healthy in any quarterback room. But certainly the way they dealt with it last year was different. I think when you bring in a guy who's played and started for 5 years, or had several starts in 5 years, you kind of assumed that he was the automatic in for the quarterback starting position. And that ended up not being the case because even Cam Fancher, even though he didn't start all 13 games, he appeared in every single game Marshall played last year. So there was kind of this undertone of, maybe they thought Fancher was the guy last year, but didn't want to throw him into the fire where he was, really high after a win over Norfolk State. And then you go to Notre Dame the next week and you never know what to expect out of a young guy. So I think, having that experience, you always talk about or hear people talk about the jump that quarterbacks make from year one to year two. And I think that's going to be important for Fancher to have an entire off season under his belt after playing the majority of the season before. So I think there's a lot of growth potential for him, and if he can stick with the trend of improving, and there's no reason he shouldn't be the starter week one.
Luke Creasy with us. We're previewing the Marshall Thundering Herd. Of course, they would travel to Greenville on September 9th inside Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium, and what will really be a huge game for both teams. East Carolina opens at Michigan. They're decided underdogs there. Marshall opens against Albany. They're be big favorites there. So I think it's a pivotal swing game for both teams early in the season. And Luke, obviously these two teams have history together. We can talk more about that. But the last time they met was another, depending on what side you're on, if you're a Marshall fan, you look at it as a miserable finish. ECU fans, really, it was a turning point of the Mike Houston era. They erased a huge deficit in the fourth quarter. Coming back with 21 unanswered to win in Huntington 42-38 on September 18th, 2021. I know Charles Huff was very frustrated after that game. What do you kind of expect when these two teams meet on September 9th? Do you think Marshall will kind of use that as a rallying cry for some revenge, or what's kind of your take on this matchup?
I think that, historically this has just been a fun matchup for fans. I think sometimes, especially in today's realm of college football, the majority of this roster didn't play in that game. Let's be honest with the way the transfer portal is, and as far as the veterans that were on that Marshall team, and you combine what you lost to graduation versus what you lost in the transfer portal, and I think this is a completely new ball game. Of course, there's some history between these two teams, a lot of history, a lot of good history. And I think that fans are excited to see, this matchup back on the schedule. As they were in 2021, which was, of course, Huff's first year. I think he had won his first two games in his Marshall career. He had the win against Navy, had the win in the home opener, and then, of course, that loss to ECU. And you mentioned that was kind of a turning point for the Pirates, but that was also a kind of a turning point for Marshall as well, because I'm pretty sure they lost their next three games and four of their next five, and kind of rallied late in that season to come back and win. They finished with a 6-6 record, went to a bowl game, or a 7-5 record. Sorry, went to a bowl game, finished 7-6 on the season. This is a fun matchup. I think, ECU is definitely going to challenge Marshall a little bit more than Albany does that opening week. And I think that's, something you want. But I look at the way that this schedule sets up compared to last year. And you talk about, difference in opponent going from, they opened with Norfolk State and then went right to play Notre Dame. And, after a 55-3 win, against, Norfolk State, you're thinking, okay, is this team good enough to compete when they go to South Bend? And they proved that they were. And so I think, momentum has a lot to do with, might play into a factor of, feelings going into the game. How does the ECU fare against Michigan? That's clearly a tougher game than Marshall's going to open with. So I think you'll have two teams that are eager to kind of show what they can do. when the competition kind of levels out as far as opponents go. So it ought to be really an exciting matchup. I'm excited to get down there. It'll be my first trip to Greenville, and just really looking forward to to seeing that rivalry renewed. Again, like I said, I think it's been good to have back on the schedule, and it should be a fun time.
No doubt. It'll be the first time Marshall has visited Greenville in about 10 years. So will be fun to welcome the Thunder and Herd back. Last thing for you, Luke, we'll let you go. Marshall, of course, just competed for their first season in the Sun Belt in 2022, moving over from Conference USA. And, there's a lot of ECU fans who say, should the Pirates move into the Sun Belt one day, given kind of the geography of the conference, there'll be more regional matchups. And right now, I think the American – too lucrative financially, but maybe down the line. Just how much does Marshall maybe enjoy the early returns of playing a Sun Belt schedule where you do have some more regional rivalries and some more commonalities between the opponents versus playing a bunch of teams in Texas and across the country?
Yeah, I think it's huge, and I think you started to see the value of that now, and it didn't necessarily show in attendance numbers. For Marshall throughout the season last year, but I think of a rivalry like App State, who Marshall, that goes back to the Southern Conference days. Same thing with Georgia Southern. I mean, these teams historically, have some beef, have some battles between them, and so I think that's fun to reintroduce to Marshall and to the fan base. I think that's probably more for the fan base versus the team, and obviously it's easier to travel to some of these destinations with the proximity of places like Boone. Obviously Coastal Carolina is not too far of a drive away. I think some of the coaches, including Charles Huff, joked last year that that's kind of Huntington South, because a lot of people from Huntington vacation in Myrtle Beach in that area. So you're reintroducing areas that people are familiar with, names of schools that people are familiar with, and I think that's just a good place to be. App State and Marshall has more of a draw than Rice and Marshall did. The closest thing to a rivalry that developed for Marshall was Western Kentucky. Of course, they had spent time in the Sun Belt too. So you're looking at that geographical footprint, and you're starting to see regional rivalries work. And I think down the line, should the Sun Belt grow in popularity and bring in a little bit more money, I think that's probably a viable option. When you look at conference realignment, and you certainly don't. If you're ECU, you don't want to take a step back from where you are. I don't think any school in America would want to take a step back, from where they're going. But certainly the regional footprint for the Sun Belt is fun. It's got the nickname the Fun Belt for a reason. And those regional rivalries have a lot to do with it. And, certainly gets fans more engaged and, a lot more fun to watch when, the fans have skin in the game and there's some history between the teams.
He is Luke Creasy from the Herald Dispatch. Couldn't agree more. It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds in the years ahead, Luke, but excited about this fall's matchup. And, hey, appreciate the time, man. Great stuff as far as information on the Thunder and Herd. I'm sure we'll be talking to each other, in person come September 9th, but also talking before then, man. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem, man. See you down there.
That is Luke Creasy from the Herald Dispatch, and we'll have more. Maybe check in with Luke as we get closer to September, maybe on game week down the line. All right, let's get our second break in. On the other side, Philip Pilkington and I will continue our opponent schedule ranking in terms of easiest to hardest. We're running down the ECU 12 opponents for the upcoming football season. We're ranking them from easiest to hardest in terms of difficulty. We'll continue that on the other side. You're listening to Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
We see some patients who come in and they have been in just so much pain for so long that they are just deflated.
But that's about to change because QC Kinetics provides hope for relief using all new regenerative treatments that concentrate your body's own healing properties into aching hips, back, shoulders, and knees. And Dr. Zuckerman, a medical director at QC Kinetics, loves watching the patient transformations.
One of the most amazing things is when I get to see a patient who, after a few months of our treatments, is just a completely different person. They are smiling and happy, and the weight of the world is off their shoulders because we were able to take away their pain.
And that's with no drugs, no surgery, and no downtime.
It's just amazing to be able to change people's lives like that. It's very gratifying.
Call QC Kinetics now for your free consultation.
Call QC Kinetics 252-765-PAIN. That's 252-765-7246. 252-765-PAIN.
Concert on the Common.
Inner Banks Media's got the biggest and best free live shows in ENC.
And it gets even better Thursday, June 8th, when Landslide hits the Town Common in Greenville.
Landslide, a tribute to Fleetwood Mac on the Greenville Toyota Amphitheater stage. Live music, food, adult beverages, giveaways, and fun for the whole family.
Still to come.
The Legacy Motown Review. The Embers featuring Craig Woolard and the Leonard Skinner Tribute Band. Tuesday is gone.
Find out more at concertonthecommon.org.
Special thanks to the City of Greenville and the Junior League of Greenville.
Concert on the Common is sponsored by ECU Health, Michelob Ultra, Pitt Greenville Airport, Greenville Toyota, The Air Doctor, Greenville Utilities, The Ritchie Law Firm, Sawyer's Fun Park, Polly Pylan State Farm Insurance, Eastern Plumbing, Town Bank, Specialty FDR, Optimum, Wells Roofing and Gutters,
and Inner Banks Media.
Fifth Street Hardware announces daily lunch specials Tuesday to Friday from 11 to 3. The Hardware Daily Specials are a great lunch for just $9. Tuesday is Burger Day. Get the Fifth Street Hardware Classic Burger, Spicy Blue Burger, Carolina Classic Burger, or Patty Melt with all the fixins for just $9. Wednesday is Flatbread Pizzas for just $9, including bacon chicken ranch or pepperoni or vegetarian. On Thursday, it's the famous Fifth Street Hardware Reuben, BLT, club, or grilled pimento cheese sandwich with all the fixings for $9. The Friday $9 lunch special at Fifth Street Hardware is fried fish, shrimp, or chicken tenders. Fifth Street Hardware is the perfect spot for a business lunch or casual lunch with friends. And now the $9 Hardware Daily Specials make Fifth Street Hardware the hot spot for lunch. See you at Fifth Street Hardware in the old Hardware Building, Uptown Greenville.
We're live with Stephen Igoe on 94.3 The Game.
Hoist the Johnny Roger!
Now, back to Hoist the Colors.
All right, welcome back into this Tuesday, June 6th edition of the show. Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game. Just had an awesome chat with Luke Creasy, previewing the Marshall Thundering Herd. Next up on our list is App State. We'll do that either later this week or early next week. Philip Pilkington rejoins us. And Philip, I got to ask, did the conversation with Luke, did that make you want to reevaluate where you have Marshall on your list?
I've got him actually decently high on my list. So, no, I think not, because I think every team I have is clearly better than them. Obviously, he's going to be a little biased towards them, but I think I got him in a good spot. Obviously, we're not 100% sure what the quarterback situation is, but I like the job that Francher did last year. I mean, he was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, so he's a redshirt sophomore, pro-style quarterback, can run really well. Yeah, I don't know. I still think I've got him at 8, which I guess I shouldn't be giving too much in advance before we do this list.
Spoilers.
But, yeah, spoilers. Got him at 8. So the teams that I have past them, I think are just too far ahead of them to want to move them. How about you?
So I had them at a 6. So we went through the first 6. Let's rerun it for those who are just joining us. So. My easiest to hardest, I have Gardner-Webb, Tulsa, Rice, Charlotte, FAU, and Marshall. And I think if the Marshall game was on the road, Philip, I would have Marshall way higher. I think Marshall historically I don't think they've beaten ECU at home in a long time, maybe several years. But that's why I have it at 6 as opposed to higher. Let's run over your 6.
Yeah, so right now I have Gardner-Webb, Charlotte, Tulsa, Rice, Navy, and SMU as my top 6.
Okay, let's continue with our list since we're getting a little low on time. Still got to get another break in. All right, so 7 on my list. Again, this is easiest to hardest. You have Navy a lot higher on your list in terms of easy. I have Navy at 7. And again, this is because Navy, I don't think Navy is as good of a football team as Marshall and probably even FAU, but this is the Navy boogeyman coming out of Stephen Igoe. Every time I go to sleep at night, I see the ghost of Navy pass running fullback dives up the gut for 70 yards. And, I can't sleep. So I have Navy higher on the list maybe than most would. Who do you have at 7?
I have FAU. I've viewed FAU and SMU equally, and I just put SMU at 6 and FAU at 7 solely because SMU's at home and FAU's on the road. I didn't really know what to do with either one of these teams.
That's fair. And I think FAU is one of the toughest teams to predict on the whole opponent schedule. 8 for me, I've got at Appalachian State, and this is I don't think this App State team is great. I think honestly they've been trending downward in recent years, but this is going to be a very tough environment, and this is similar to if this game was at home, I wouldn't have it at as high. They beat ECU soundly in 2021, and I think going to Boone, they're going to be fired up for East Carolina. Heading to the mountain or up the mountain, whatever they say. So where do you have Marshall here, right?
Yeah, I have Marshall here. And I think a lot of the reason I have Marshall this high is because of the fact, too, that it's so early in the season, and I'm really not sure the identity of this Pirates team, and I don't think they're sure. And, if Michigan doesn't go well, if they go out and lose by 3 touchdowns, I'm really worried about kind of a hangover going into the Marshall game. So I think the placement on the schedule is part of the reason I have them as high as I do.
That's fair. You definitely don't want to go to Michigan and get beat up and then turn around and try to have to play what's going to be a very pivotal game. All right, number 9, then we'll get our final break in and do our final 3. Number 9 on my list, I've got the SMU Mustangs. I think SMU is going to be extremely talented this year. They brought in a ton of transfers because they're rolling in NIL money. They cheated for years. Now they can do it legally. They're bringing in a ton of transfers. I'm just not sold on Rhett Lashley as a coach. We'll see long term. And also, this is a home game for ECU on a Thursday night. SMU historically not a great road team. So I think SMU is arguably the second or third most talented team ECU will play, but I have them at number 8 for this reason. Or at number 9, excuse me.
Yeah, so obviously I already had SMU. I did not do as much research on the transfers as you did, unfortunately. At 9, I have Meep. I got UTSA at 9. This team is 30-10 under Jeff Taylor, and they're returning one of their 2 main running backs from a year ago. They were 11-3. I think they're a very tough team. I think it's going to be a tough game for the Pirates.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough game. I have them obviously higher, which we'll get into on the other side. Let's get our final break in. We'll come back. We'll give our final 3 of the opponent schedule ranking on this edition of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
Greenville's premier Uptown Concert Series returns.
Concert on the Comet.
This year's acts include Landslide, a tribute to Fleetwood Mac, June 8th.
For more details and a full lineup of bands, go to concertonthecommon.org.
Greenville's premier Uptown Concert Series returns.
Concert on the Comet.
This year's acts include the Legacy Motown Review, June 22nd.
For more details and a full lineup of bands, go to concertonthecommon.org.
Your vehicle packs a load of safety features to protect you in an accident. At North Carolina Farm Bureau Insurance, it's our job to protect you just as well after an accident. With fast claim service from local agents, our auto coverage is a lot like an airbag. We hope you never need to use it, but we're right there and ready just in case you do. North Carolina Farm Bureau Insurance, helping you is what we do best.
In Greenville, contact your local Farm Bureau agent for a quote for your car, home, life, or your health. You'll be working with neighbors you can trust. People like Lynn Sugg, Justin Batts, or Austin Shackelford today. These agents are dedicated to protecting your family and your dreams. These Farm Bureau agents are knowledgeable in a wide range of insurance products, but they are tuned in to the Greenville community. Again, contact Lynn Sugg, Justin Batts, or Austin Shackelford today at Farm Bureau Insurance in Greenville at 252-756-3165. That's 252-756-3165. 3165.
North Carolina Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, Farm Bureau Insurance of North Carolina, Inc., Southern Farm Bureau Life Insurance Company, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association.
We see some patients who come in and they have been in just so much pain for so long that they are just deflated.
But that's about to change because QC Kinetics provides hope for relief using all new regenerative treatments that concentrate your body's own healing properties into aching hips, back, shoulders, and knees. And Dr. Zuckerman, a medical director at QC Kinetics, loves watching the patient transformations.
One of the most amazing things is when I get to see a patient who, after a few months of our treatments, is just a completely different person. They are smiling and happy, and the weight of the world is off their shoulders because we were able to take away their pain.
And that's with no drugs, no surgery, and no downtime.
It's just amazing to be able to change people's lives like that. It's very gratifying.
Call QC Kinetics now for your free consultation.
Call QC Kinetics, 252-765-PAIN. That's 252-765-7246. 252-765-PAIN.
Have you had a colonoscopy? If you're between the ages of 45 and 75, you need to be screened regularly for colorectal cancer. Dr. Philip Goldstein at Carolina Digestive Diseases and Endoscopy Center wants to keep you healthy. Dr. Goldstein provides treatment and quality care for all GI needs. Just call the office at 252-758-8181. Appointments are always available within 5 business days.
Hi, this is Dr. Philip Goldstein reminding you that a colonoscopy can save your life. Visit our website, cddgastro.com, and come see us at Carolina Digestive Diseases.
Climb aboard as we set sail and hoist the colors.
Matey!
Back to the show with Steve and Igoe on 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome back into the show. We are wrapping up this Tuesday, June 6th edition of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game. We've had a fun show. Luke Creasy gave us an in-depth report on what to expect from Marshall. We are now running down and finishing up our list of the opponents on ECU's 2023 football schedule. We've ran down our top 9 in terms of easiest to hardest, and we're going to finish it out with our final 3. We'll do a final rundown, and then we'll do the last 3. Philip, from easiest to hardest, I've got Gardner-Webb, Tulsa at Rice, Charlotte at FAU, Marshall at Navy, at App, and then SMU is my 9th. I guess 9th easiest game would be the best way to put it, but definitely one of the most hardest. And your top 9?
Yeah, I've got Gardner-Webb, Charlotte, Tulsa, Rice, Navy, SMU, FAU, Marshall, and UTSA.
All right, let's do our final 3. The third most toughest – gosh, what am I trying to say? The third toughest – I've got Tulane as the 10th easiest game on the schedule, if that's the better way to put it. I'm not sold on Tulane being like this juggernaut every year now just because they won one good season, one good bowl game. So I'm very curious to see what they do this year. They lost some key pieces. I know they have Pratt back at quarterback. Willie Fritz is a heck of a coach. But interested to see, Philip, if Tulane is anywhere near as good as they were last year.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be as good. I have them at number 10 as well. But, this is Pratt's going to be his 4th year as a starting quarterback. Yes, that second year did not go as planned, but he was playing with a bum shoulder. And when he's healthy, this offense rolls. I have them at number 10 as well.
They did lose some key defensive personnel, which, that was their calling card last year, but the offense was still really good. Also lost Tajay Spears. So, Willie Fritz is a great coach, so they're always going to be one of the toughest games on the schedule regardless. So we'll see what happens. Number 11 for me, I've got UTSA. I've got the road trip to the Alamo Dome. They've finished the last 2 years in the top 25. Really good football team. Frank Harris, their quarterback, returns. It's a tough place to play. It'll be the toughest road environment outside of the obvious. So I got UTSA at number 11.
Yeah, I've got App at 11, and not that I think that they are a better team than Tulane or UTSA. I'm just really worried this year about how long it is going to take East Carolina to find their identity. And going to a place like App, an in-state rival, we saw how poorly it went a few years ago. We played them at Bank of America. For some reason, I've just got this gut feeling this game is going to go abysmally for the Pirates. I don't know if that's a word, but I don't know why. Gut feeling, yeah, I don't know who's going to start at quarterback. I know it's a discussion for another day. We don't have a lot of time. But I really don't even know who the starting quarterback is going to be. I don't think it's set in stone that it's Mason Garcia. I think everybody's still going to be trying to get their feet under them week 3. Yeah, it's got a bad feeling about this one.
And number 1, I think we both have the same answer here. At Michigan has to be number 1.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have Michigan at 1, what have you been watching over the last decade of college football?
ECU, a 36.5-point favorite, I believe, is the line in Vegas. So, Michigan, clear favorite. They're going to be a national title contender. And so you look at the rankings, Philip. You have Marshall, App, and Michigan, all in the last, basically among the 4 or 5 toughest games on the schedule?
Yeah, I do. And like I said, I think it's a lot of bias in there, the fact that I'm really worried about this team finding their identity.
And it's fair because you look at all the new pieces, and that's kind of why you would like to have maybe Gardner-Webb earlier in the schedule. Because let's be real, the worst-case scenario is 0-3. I think if you're 1-2 after that 3-game stretch, you're not feeling terrible. If you're 0-3, that can be kind of demoralizing. So it's going to be a big first part of the schedule just to manage it and not get buried early. It is a manageable middle part of the schedule. Several of the teams we mentioned towards the easiest part of the slate were among our easiest teams, are more towards the middle part of the schedule. But that early part of the schedule will be tough.
I agree. And, the thing is, though, we had the same 4 teams in our top 4. Maybe not in the same order, but I think past Gardner-Webb, Charlotte, Tulsa, Rice, this is a tough schedule for East Carolina. It really is. Now, the teams that came in the middle, as you mentioned, do come in the middle, but, teams like SMU, FAU, I mean, these are not give-me football games, and this is going to have to be a grind of a season for East Carolina.
Anybody that thinks the Pirates are facing a easy schedule just because they're back in the quote-unquote new or old Conference USA, you look at this and then you can be more mistaken. So good stuff. Appreciate the homework assignment, Philip, and we'll come up with something for later this week as well. Thanks again to Luke Creasy from the Herald Dispatch. Tomorrow we'll talk with Garrett McGinn, former ECU lineman. This has been Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
This has been Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igoe. Tune in weekdays at noon for all things ECU sports. Get a recap of the show at 943thegame.com, on Twitter, Facebook, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We're back tomorrow with more of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
Hey, Greg Fussell here.